Hey Swale, good day my friends. Today I'll be giving an introduction to the topic of what anger is. So, what is anger? It is an emotion, something that everyone experiences. I'm sure you can think of at least a few times you've experienced anger, or maybe even someone else's anger. Sometimes the anger can be so severe that we lash out at others. For many individuals, it is difficult to recognize and manage our anger without hurting others. It's important to remember, though, that there is always a choice not to respond with violence or harshness. Now, there's two levels of emotions we'll talk about today. The first being the primary emotion. Now, primary meaning the first, the basic, or instinctive. Primary emotions are emotions such as anger, disgust, fear, happiness, sadness, and surprise. These emotions are the core feelings we all have. Anger is a primary emotion, lets us know that our boundaries have been crossed. It alerts us that something is wrong within and needs our attention. It is more out of an instinct for our protection. So one way to think about these primary emotions is to think about the movie Inside Out by Pixar. Yeah, those guys. So there's anger, there's joy, there's disgust or surprise, and fear. And at the bottom there's sadness. Now, secondary emotions are often other emotions that tend to mask these primary emotions, or are a combination of these primary emotions. So for example, guilt, enthusiasm, shame, hope, or trust. Anger is often the main one to mask these other emotions. So these emotions tend to last longer, I think due to them being more complex, and it is harder for us to recognize what's really going on. For example, embarrassment is a combination of sad and scared. People tend to avoid addressing these feelings. Many will shift into anger mode, usually subconsciously. This can create a sense of power and control, although this sense is impossible to maintain and will ultimately lead to the suffering of yourself and possibly others. Now, I'm going to go through a few examples to help wrap your minds around this a little bit. So an example of primary emotion as anger is hunger. So that angry feeling some of us get after being hungry. Your body needs nutrients, and it lets you know sometimes that when you're running on low by getting angry. It's like, hey, feed me something. As soon as you eat, you're not angry anymore. This is more of an instinctive kind of anger. Now, secondary anger as an emotion. Billy is getting bullied at school. He continues living with fear and sadness and frustration. Billy doesn't address these issues and ends up lashing out at his friends and his family. The anger and lashing out keeps getting worse and worse until he does it at school with a teacher, and now he's suspended. He's not listening to his parents, and he's pushed away his good friends. And he's hanging around other friends who have anger issues. Now, he may be getting angry at the small things, but what really is deep underneath is sadness and fear from being bullied. And he's using this anger subconsciously. I don't think he's choosing it, but he's using it to mask these emotions, and he's using it to feel more power and control over the situation, although it's affecting him negatively in the long run. That is an example of anger as a secondary emotion. So it can be both. Anger can be healthy or it can be unhealthy. Healthy anger, a person's thoughts may look like they're responsible for their actions, I am responsible for mine. How can I grow stronger, wiser, and safer? Their actions may look like taking some time for emotional release, some self-care. Spiritual practice may look like forgiveness, praying, spending time with the Creator. and effective productive action. So they are working towards growth and healing of the situation or relationships. Their emotions might reflect power and strength. I have the ability to overcome this in a good way. Release and relief. This is self-explanatory. And forgiveness and acceptance. So letting that go. It is what it is, and we've let it go in a good way. I'm not saying that this is easy or natural, but this is a snapshot of what healthy anger is. Now there's unhealthy anger. A person with unhealthy anger, their thoughts may look along the lines of, it's not my fault. Blaming. They are bad. They are evil. I'm good because I'm not them. You can't do the internal work if you don't accept your part. Their actions may look like aggression, attacking, violence, passive-aggressive behavior, depression, and or illness. So what happens and occurs when you don't address the issue subconsciously and work to let it go, it's called suppression. And it's going to come out one way or another. So it can come out in a healthy way, or it can come out in an unhealthy way. Their emotions, they'll tend to feel like a victim. Like, oh, everything's against me. These people are always against me. I'm always getting picked on. They'll feel like they're nursing their wounds. And they may do this in an unhealthy way, like with substance abuse, gambling, risky behaviors, anything to kind of numb what they're going through. And they'll feel helplessness and powerlessness. And this is often why they turn to anger, is to feel that moment of control and power, when really that's what they're feeling, is that helplessness and powerlessness. What does your anger look like? Is it healthy or unhealthy? What are some ways you cope when you find yourself angry? What are some ways you can replace unhealthy coping mechanisms with healthy ones?